My name is Ariel Mayer. I am the camp director for Girls Rock Milwaukee, which is typically a week-long camp. So we thought we would let folks know about Girls Rock, spread the word, and do a bunch of different events where you get a little sneak peek into what camp is like. So it's all about just kind of developing yourself as an artist overall. But this time, we really wanted to talk to folks about not everyone who loves music can be a musician or is a musician. So sometimes you want to support, and that's what our panel is here today. We're going to be talking about. Everyone who is here works in the music industry in some capacity, if not also as a musician. I would like to present to you our moderator for the day, a Girls Rock Milwaukee board member, as well as a planning committee member, and also longtime supporter who has filmed our showcases. At the end of the week-long camp, our young ladies get to perform the songs that they wrote during that week-long camp at Turner Hall. And then it gets turned into an amazing video. So if you haven't seen those, please check out our Facebook and all the cool work that Betty from Sea Dog Creative has done for us. Thank you.
No, I'm so happy to have everyone here. We're going to be talking about the music industry and people who work in it and adjacent to it, supporting it, as Ariel described. And I think we're going to kick off with the tough questions, which is your name and your current job or relationship to the music industry. Okay? And I'm just going to pass this down. You guys can go down the line however you'd like.
Hey, my name's Quinn. I'm a musician, music journalist, and organizer in the music industry.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm a concert photographer. Right now I'm working for Summerfest, the Pabst Theater, and the Rave.
Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm an audio engineer, producer, and performer.
Hi, my name is Steph Lippert. I'm a performer, pianist, music educator, and DJ, and among other things.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Be Free, and I am a musical Swiss Army knife because I am a singer, songwriter, producer, and musician, but I also work as the music education coordinator for 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, running Grace Weber's Music Lab, which is a music program for teens.
Woo! Big round of applause for our panelists. What inspired you to go on the path that you are on for your work or your activities? Kind of how old do you think you were when you knew that is something you wanted to pursue? For example, I was in a band in high school and college. I loved doing it. Maybe not my talent deep down, and it was when I was 20, 21 where I was like, oh, I want to keep doing music stuff, but I feel like maybe I'm not the one who needs to be making the music. And that's when I started as maybe I can use my creativity for film and video, and that really clicked with me. So I just would love to hear kind of your stories on how you got to making the decision to support or be in the music.
So for me, I asked my dad for a drum set when I was 13 years old and didn't expect him to actually follow through with it, and he did. So I started playing the drums as a teenager. And then when I was in college, I started writing about music, and I co-founded a publication at the time called Explain News, where we were writing a lot about the music scene at the time. And then at that point, I just realized I missed playing the drums. I hadn't done it in so long. I went to college, couldn't take my drum set in my dorm room with me, unfortunately. So then I kind of just started writing about music and getting involved in the music scene, and I met people, and we just started playing music together again, and that's all she wrote.
So for me, I've always been artistic since I was little, and my parents said I always kind of had a camera in my hand, but I never thought I'd be a photographer. I went to high school and I was really interested in art, but I had a really mean art teacher. She kind of shunned me and said, "You're not going to get anywhere with that." And I was like, okay. So my first 3 years of college were psychology. And then I had a midlife crisis because it just wasn't working out. A little bit. Broke up with a boyfriend. I was like failing in psychology classes, but I actually went down to Disney World and did the Disney College program. And then I kind of had some extra cash, bought a nice camera, and then everyone was like, "Oh, these are really good." And I'm like, "It's just the camera, like it's not me." And then it kind of just snowballed into there. I was picking up other projects. And then how I got into concert photography was I knew a person who worked for the Pabst, and she called me randomly one day and was like, "Hey, we need someone to shoot the show tonight. Like, are you available?" And I was like, "Yes, but I've never shot a show ever in my entire life, but I'll do it." And then I kind of just snowballed from there. And I knew right then and there, like, that was my true passion is concert photography. So, yeah.
So I got into music when I was pretty young. I come from kind of a musical family. We, me and my little sister really bonded over trying to write songs, and she's a dancer, and we would try to kind of do little ditties. And as I got older, I started to realize that, and as I started kind of trying to collaborate with other people in my life, that it was a lot easier and a lot more conducive to whatever artistic process like we were settling into if we could handle the technical elements behind actually making music, like the technological elements behind it, like being able to record ideas quickly and knowing how to like set up and tear down our stuff in our parents' basement and stuff like that. And it was sort of the realization that if you have the knowledge, the technological knowledge, to make your ideas a reality, you don't have to rely on anybody else for that. And that kind of that empowerment behind the technology is kind of what inspired me to get even further into audio engineering.
Love the enthusiasm in the crowd.
For me, I started playing music when I was about 9, and I knew pretty much right away that was the only thing that I was going to do forever, and it was a gift. And so before I started, I literally just bugged my parents. I was like, "I think I want to take piano lessons." And they were like, "We'll see. I'm the last out of 5 kids, so you do things differently." And so I just kind of kept nagging them about it, and they're like, "Okay." And right away it was just like that was it. And so after that, the next year I started playing brass instruments, and then from there on I just tried to do as much musical things as I could in a number of different genres. But my background when I started was classical, which now from where I am, it's been a complete overhaul and 360 about all the different music things that I've been doing, but was always just trying to chase after that. And so I ended up going to school for music, double music major, but I didn't finish my music degrees, which is just to say that if you want to be involved in music or anything related to music, you don't have to go to school just to be able to work in it or be involved in it. But for me, I just knew that it was just a done deal till the very end. So I've been very fortunate to be blessed with just all sorts of different opportunities, but also very blessed that I had parents that were very supportive of that. And also just really a lot of really good mentors along the way that were like, "Yeah, you should explore this route. You should explore this route." So, yeah.
I think what seems to be like a common thread among a lot of us is we kind of knew early on that this was something that had a spark that we wanted to follow. And I think the same thing kind of applies to me. I don't really think I had a choice. My parents were musicians. So all of us kind of had this creative infusion already instilled in us from birth. But I knew right away when I was very little that music was something that was special to me. But it wasn't until I was like 8 or 9 when I started seeing Brandy on TV. She was on Moesha and stuff. That's when I knew I wanted to be a performer, because I was like, I want to replicate that feeling, and me having the opportunity like to sing in like church choirs and little school performances. I loved the feeling of being on stage and creating some kind of artistic and musical joy that people could receive, and it was just this beautiful serendipitous, I don't know if that's the right word, but this circular thing. Like, I'm giving it to them, they're giving it back, and it was just I'm like, I want to keep that feeling for as long as possible. Now life happens, obviously we don't all get to be Brandy immediately. But I did stay with music throughout my entire matriculation. I went to Milwaukee High School of the Arts, and I majored in vocal jazz and wind ensemble and jazz lab. And then I also carried that with me into college. So my undergrad degree is in performance, but then I also continued forth into grad school and got an education degree, because I found that even though performance was my passion, I also had a really strong and innate ability to teach other people the things that were passionate to me. So I found that that was going to be my new pathway, and I've kind of been carrying that with me ever since. I taught for 7 years at Milwaukee Montessori School as a music director there, but also with the things that I'm doing now, it's still involved in just letting other people know the avenues that are available to them. So me being able to be a performer in the city gives other people examples of the type of stuff that they can do, especially being a woman, being a performer and a producer, which we know is very important to our artistry. I like being able to be a sound example to other people of what they can do, and all of this is stuff that I knew was going to be a part of me regardless in some way, shape, or form.
Woo! Brandy's Cinderella Forever. It's the best one.
Oh, yes.
It's pretty excited when that came back out. So let's talk about challenges. So what are some challenges you've faced? And this can be either in your journey getting to where you've been, or maybe something more recent, something you experience in your role, actually doing it.
That's kind of a hard one. I would say because I'm a drummer, even as a girl, I was fetishized for being a drummer, which is kind of interesting, and I never really piece the two together, and it's not really my personality to look into that kind of stuff, because I was just whatever, I don't think this is a good thing, I'm not going to look into the history of this. But I unfortunately just had to learn that that's something that exists, where men will just say oh, you're a drummer, and it means something to them. And I think I've fallen into this kind of challenge of what even is femininity and masculinity, and I think I do other things that are also challenging of that. I do weightlifting and that kind of stuff. So I guess just the challenge of begging the question, what is, sexual about this in general. So, yeah, that's something that I've faced and had a challenge with. But, yeah, there's a lot of girl drummers out there. I don't know why people always treat me like I'm the only one, but there's plenty of amazing women musicians out there, so.
I'd say for me, it's getting gigs. And in the beginning, it was very hard, and the photo industry too is very male dominant. I've been to several shows where I've shot and I'm the only female, and kind of hard. But anyways, still just shooting shows, finding those gigs, it's really hard because it's all about who you know. It's it's not you can just kind of get in there. And that's my biggest tip is just make connections and be nice to people, because that's pretty much how I've gotten all of my gigs, is just kind of knowing someone in the industry, which is unfortunate because I know a lot of talented people who just can't get in and they can't get the gigs. But it's we're all kind of here supporting each other in the photography community, and even all of us, it's kind of small. It's smaller than you think in Milwaukee, but so we all kind of support each other. But yeah, that's the biggest struggle. It's just kind of getting gigs. Yeah.
So the biggest challenge for me in the audio world has been kind of understanding that, especially when you're at a local level like I am, it's extremely rare to be able to specialize in one aspect of the audio world. I went into it thinking that I was going to be a recording engineer working in a studio, and that's all I could. I had the horse blinders on. That was what I thought it was going to be. While I do love that path, it's not, especially when you're getting started, not the most realistic full-time job per se. So in the AV world, it's important to learn as much as you can about all the different elements so that you can do a lot of different types of things. So I've done things like live sound at small venues, which is very different than doing live sound at big venues, which is another thing that, is a great thing to learn and get into. So being able to manage, live sound recordings and kind of getting into lots of different, there's just so many different applications that in order to kind of piece it all together into one cohesive, like professional effort, you kind of need to learn a little bit about video and a little bit about the differences between how to produce great live sound versus how to create use creative recording techniques in a studio to kind of inform a song. So I guess that the biggest challenge has been not only it's very easy for me to get into a lot of those different things. The hard part is piecing it all together, and yeah.
One challenge that I'm gonna speak on today is the relationship between music and color and genres. So my background is in classical music, so Western European music. And I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in Grafton and Saukville. And so, I was used to kind of being one of the only people who looked like me as a kid growing up. And I have a lot of black friends and stuff like that. And so one thing that I just didn't quite understand was people not expecting to see somebody like me playing classical music. And so I think a lot of times when people ask, at least in the past, what do you do? Or I'd preface it with I'm a classically trained pianist, because for some reason I felt like that was way important. But I guess it was just kind of twisted because I feel like I may have brought that up because of the relationship between the two. Somehow I have to prove myself something, if that makes sense. And so just kind of realizing that I would be prefacing myself with certain things that I thought would be more impressive. And then just the fact that I would come into auditions even and people wouldn't expect me to be black. or how about just teaching, you get a gig, for example, you get some new students and you're talking to their parents over the phone and you're like, I hope they know that I'm black. And it's weird that you should have to think about color or gender when it comes to music, because it's something that we all really need. But somehow, you find yourself making prefaces for yourself and your existence in spaces. And so now when people ask me what I do, I don't always try to preface it with, I had this sort of training, or I had this level of this, because it doesn't really matter. So I know that was something that really kind of plagued at me for a long time, because you just really don't see a lot of people that are in the classical music world that are black, but they do exist. There's plenty of conductors and composers that created music that isn't programmed, and then another challenge, kind of tying back into what Quinn said, I used to be a tuba player for a very long time, and I'm a little brass player, and it's also a very male-dominated territory. And so walking into places with a big old tuba and heels, people be like, oh, they don't expect you to be good at those instruments because they're used to seeing men play those instruments. And so one of the things, you kind of just have to not care about what people think or what they expect you to do or look like when it comes to picking an instrument, because I always try to pick the things that I wanted to do, but I didn't realize that it was unusual, but I don't know. Yeah.
That's actually a really dope point. I never thought about how much being a black musician or being a black woman musician has definitely fit into a lot of the challenges that we've had. But I've had some of those similar instances as well. I think the common thing is that we've all had some kind of difficult experience having to show that we knew what we were talking about. You know, like people often don't really take us for face value. And I look great on paper, okay? If you physically saw my resume, all these things I just told y'all do, like you wouldn't have a need to question the person standing in front of you had you not known of them before. So it is frustrating to have to constantly be in a position of having to prove ourselves again and again and again when you know that you can do the work, especially when you're in positions of leadership, which is often when in the field that we're in. I recently, a couple of years ago, started curating shows here in the city. Recently did a series called MJ Uncovered that was over at Turner Hall. And that was one of the most difficult feats I've ever had to do in my life. Aside from having to take on the whole creative hall of, you know, reimagining Michael Jackson's catalog, it was me in the center of everything. And I was a woman and I'm leading all of these men. There were plenty of times where they don't listen to me. You know, like it's really frustrating to have to constantly beat things into people's head and show them like this is why this is correct and this is why I know what I'm talking about. But it's a never ending battle, but it's a hill that I'm happy to climb because I can only hope that with that other people will see that they are welcome to come in the door standing up for themselves, so we don't have to constantly have this ideology that we have anything to prove in the first place.
That leads so good into the next question, which is about stereotypes and your identity, any aspect of it. And if you could speak to maybe any times you've experienced that specifically, more broadly, if you've maybe already touched on it, you could talk about a specific challenge or muse more on it or pass. But yeah, I would love to just discuss that.
I guess to talk about the other end of the spectrum, I mean, I'm not classically trained. I took private drum lessons, and I, was taking lessons and singing and whatever it might be, but I never went to school for any of this stuff. So I think just an internal issue with myself and not feeling like what I am doing is, up to par compared to what other people can do. But kind of just getting to a point where you have to, muster that from yourself and create that confidence within yourself and trust in yourself and know that as you get older, you start to realize that we're all just figuring out as we go. And if other people can get into what you're doing, that's all that really matters. So
I'm going to follow on that. That's something I struggle with to this day is imposter syndrome. Pretty bad, and that's just one thing I've been working on. And I actually started getting mentored by other photographers that I thought were up higher than me to find out I feel like I almost have more knowledge and education than them. But to me, they're like glorified. So it's all mental. I think it's all in your head. And that's just one thing that I'm really trying to focus on is just where I've come, where I started, I think that helps a lot. And we all grow, we're all learning. And I think that's just, it's always going to be a struggle, but trying to stay positive and keep going and keep growing and learning.
Yeah, so in the audio-visual field, I think that the stat, the last time I saw it, was that it's less than 5% of the whole field is made up of women or non-men. So it's there's a lot of challenges regarding the stereotypes and the kinds of things that you kind of get put through in especially the live sound industry. I have not had any issues at all in the recording world. I think that in Milwaukee especially, there's a really great community of engineers. Although they are mostly men, there are non-men engineers out there too in Milwaukee that are doing great work, and the men that are in that field are extremely cognizant of being inclusive and not having gender be a really big factor in it. But in the live sound world and some of the other more technology related facets of what I do, that has been a huge challenge. I mean, and the ways that I try to confront those challenges are, so a big part of live sound is the load in and the load out. So that's unloading trucks and loading them back up again. So you're literally working on a loading dock with a bunch of sweaty dudes. And, you know, if you know you're going into that, you know, make sure that you are physically and like mentally prepared to like kind of have to pull your weight around. Every person that every like, I don't know. Yeah, so there's the physical element in the live sound world that I just try to like not give them anything to say, you know, I'll make sure that I'm working my butt off as much as I can, and while also being like aware of my own like limitations. There's a lot of like height stuff that you have to do. I used to work at the Milwaukee Theater, and that catwalk is absolutely terrifying. I and that's why I'm in audio and not in lighting. But yeah, so just being physically and like mentally, emotionally prepared for the physical elements of the job is really important. And then you guys are talking a lot about having to like prove your worth as a musician and like prove that you're knowledgeable and prove that you know, you have earned your space there. And the ways that I definitely fall into that same mindset a lot, where it's like I have to prove I'm there or people are gonna literally pull me off the job, which has happened before. And you know, I missed one cut of a live video thing. The director didn't give me the call, and I missed it because I didn't have the show memorized, and I got pulled immediately from it. And that was a very it was hard for me, you know, as somebody that needs to do a great job and, you know, work do the proving thing. But having that experience taught me that it's okay. It doesn't matter. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And even if you kind of get you may get treated unfairly if you make a mistake in these high stakes working environments. And the ways that I deal with that is just by, you know, I will try to be the most knowledgeable person about whatever it is and overcome the doubts through knowledge. That's just the best way to empower yourself in those situations.
Yeah, I guess for me, with just the classical background, and this is important to me because it was the first thing that made me like really, really love music. That I was just very captivated by it. But just going back to that stereotype of just like, you know, black musicians that are in the classical world, that was a big deal. It was like kind of scarring a little bit because people just weren't expecting me to be really good at that. And so, you know, it's something that I'm still trying to like undo, like I said, about trying to preface my existence within sound, no matter the genre. And so I guess how I've dealt with it is like you really just have to do what you want to do. And it takes a lot of work to kind of quiet those things that are tugging at you as far as like what other people's expectations are of you. But I think as long as you're passionate about what it is, whatever you're doing within music, film, audio engineering, just do it. And you're gonna have to just like forge ahead without being apologetic. And so I know I have a little bit of sound engineering experience. There'd be times where I'd be working at one of my favorite little places, the Jazz Estate, and people are like, "Oh, where's our sound person? Where's our sound man?" Right. And so they're over here being all sorts of ways, not realizing that I'm the sound man. And so, you know, you really don't know who's who sometimes. And so I think just at the end of the day, like, you kind of have to be a little bit, not bossy, but like with all due respect, you know, this is what I do, and not worry about what other people are expecting you to look like or sound like, and just be confident.
Ditto. No, seriously, everybody hit so many different specifics right on the head. I wouldn't have anything to add that wouldn't just be accentuate what they already said. But no, completely agree and concur.
Love it. Same. So let's move on to the happy stuff. We've talked about some challenges. What is the best part of what you do in your role? What inspires you about it, and makes you happy?
I guess I sometimes, I can get down on things, and I admit that I can be a little bit of a negative Nancy sometimes, where it's like, you're hauling this drum kit all over the place, it's heavy, why am I doing this? But then once you actually start playing music with your bandmates, I think that's really what it's all about. And I feel like I always that's always the reminder I need. Like, this is why I'm doing it. Like, honestly, the gigs, the shows, whatever, the albums, whatever, but that's why I keep doing it, for that connection musically that you have when you're playing with other people, and you create these deeper relationships with each other, and you can start really actually jamming with each other, and you can know what someone else is about to do before they do it, and you get to create this new language with other people. I think that's what really keeps me going personally.
For me, it's making the connections with people from around the world. So I also do merch and event staff at shows. So on top of photography, but I meet people from all over, and it's just really cool to connect with people. On top of photography, when I'm shooting, I feel like I'm in a different world, and it's just this energy that when people are in the room looking up, and I always turn around and look at the crowd, and it's just a surreal moment where it's these people are enjoying their time. They're not worrying about anything else in life except for just right here and then. And I actually cry multiple times when I'm shooting, because I just get so emotional, and it's just that's what I love. I love seeing people's emotions and capturing them, and of course shooting the bands, and you get those shots that are yes, this is it. This is getting blown up in poster, but yeah.
I think that my favorite part about audio engineering and recording and production in general is finding ways to use different kinds of technology to translate either my ideas or somebody else's ideas, working collaboratively with people that you're really getting, you're on the same wavelength, or even if you're not, you're able to find ways to use different kinds of technology to translate their ideas and stories into something in the real world, something that you hear physically, and all the different ways that you can do that. There are truly limitless options for recording and for taking your artistic ideas in one aspect and kind of turning it into something else entirely, or even rather than something else entirely, making it more so what it was supposed to be all along.
For me, I just always recognized that even at a very early age that music was a gift that was given to me. And it's a gift that's been given to all of us that completely transcends color, that transcends race, gender, genre, and all those things. And it's one of the biggest things that we all have in common that we can share with each other. So just going back to that exchange, I've always been excited about sharing what I do through sounds. And going back to some of the other responses is that just seeing how that transfers over into other people's lives and energies is something that I've always been fascinated by, and excites me every day. I've been fortunate that I've always worked as a musician since I was a child, and the chase of making people happy through music, it is as much for myself, but more so it's just like the most fun thing that I know how to do. And I just enjoy giving back to people through sound. And one of my teachers, he always said that if even one or two people's days have been elevated by what you have to bring to the table through art or film, music, then you're succeeding at what it is you've been set out to do. So, I'm constantly trying to stay inspired by what everybody's doing, just recognizing that it really does make the world better.
A ditto. No, I feel like Steph is always just already saying the bulk of what's already in my head, so it's just really ironic that she goes right before me. No, but just further playing on to all of that, like what keeps me inspired, I guess, because this is a very, very grueling field, no matter what aspect of it you're in. I love having a superpower, you know what I mean? Like being able to have that kind of effect over folks, whether it's through something that you're creating or whether you're showing them to create it themselves. Like that's a superpower, and not everybody gets that. Not everybody understands that. And if you get it, you are having a moment of connectivity with each of those individuals, like near or far. Like that is such a cool feeling to me. And it's nothing that I ever want to go away. So those are the sorts of things that I think keep me inspired the most with what I'm doing. No matter what, gets me down, or having these same exact feelings that all these panelists have had, especially with the imposter syndrome. No, like I like the fact that we've been given this gift of having a superpower, and it's like our responsibility to keep it going in some way, shape, or form. So that's really cool.
Woo! All right, we're going to wind it down here in the interest of time. We're going to go with the big question of what's some advice you would give to someone looking to do what you do? Something maybe you wish you had known, or you could tell your past self, or any of these lovely people who have heard you today and been like, that's awesome, I want to live that person's life.
I guess specifically talking about the Milwaukee music scene, I mean, you really just have to put yourself out there. One thing that I really appreciate about the Milwaukee music scene that I think gets overlooked a lot, especially on the national circuit, is how friendly we are. Like, when I first started writing about music, I was so nervous to approach people, to interview them, but everybody was so inviting and willing to speak with me and willing to meet up with me. You really just have to put yourself out there, even if it feels uncomfy at first, and you'll just get more and more comfortable with it as you keep doing it. And also, I would also say take time to reflect and look back at, different parts of your life. I do that pretty often, where I just think to myself, even if things aren't going the way I expected them to go, what 10-year-old Quinn would have thought about what she's doing now, and I think she'd be pretty excited about it. So take time to have that reflection with yourself, and you'll probably be surprised with how far you've come.
I wish I would have started earlier. I feel like I got late into the game being a photographer, a concert photographer, I guess. So I work with a lot of other people who are way younger than me. I'm 30, by the way. So I feel like there's a lot of 16-year-olds out there, and they are touring on a bus with the bands. And I'm like, oh, that would have been so dope to do that when I was younger. But now I have too many responsibilities as an old woman. So I guess the other advice would be don't give up, because I remember when I first started doing concerts, I sent out an email to 50 different people, magazines, venues, to see if I could shoot a show, because before then I wasn't really anything and they didn't know who I was and I didn't really have a portfolio. One person got back to me out of the 50, and I remember staying up all night emailing them, and it hurt, but then I was like, you know what, this is the one opportunity. And then those small opportunities got me kind of where I am today. And so don't give up. It takes time. It took me 2 years of shooting for free to get where I am today. So sometimes you don't get paid. A lot of late nights and yeah, but keep going. It's worth it. Yeah.
So my advice to anybody who's trying to get into any audio field, I have two main things. The first one is for me, I have always found my power in this field through knowledge and obtaining as much knowledge as possible. So that means watching a lot of YouTube videos. You don't necessarily need to go to school for this anymore. You can most of the programs out there are, many of the programs that I've come into contact with, including the one that I was in, was very hands-off. It was great in that it gave me an outlet to try a lot of things, but it was very unguided. You kind of had the room to learn as much or as little technical knowledge as you wanted to while you were doing the artistic elements of it. And I highly recommend learning as much as you can about those technical elements. There's tons of YouTube channels, there's tons of books, there's tons of online courses. And once you feel confident in that knowledge and the textbook stuff, just do it as much as you can. But while you're doing it as much as you can, this is the second part of my advice, is make sure that as you are doing the grind and trying to establish yourself, that you are also spending your energy strategically so that you don't burn yourself out. Because when you're expected to do so many different things and then also have to pay your bills and your loans and all of that stuff, it's really easy to get engulfed in that side of it, and that definitely takes out a lot of the passion that you might have. So make sure to really know your stuff and do it, and do it strategically.
Just a couple of things. There's so much I could say about just words of advice. The main thing is that if there's something that you absolutely have to do or want to do, just do it. I know it sounds easier said than done, but there's no wrong time to do something that you'd like to do. There's never it's too late or I started too late. There's things that I'm doing musically now that I barely have experience doing. So don't let the amount of time that's maybe gone by stop you from jumping into something brand new. And the other thing is just to be open with realizing that you might think that you have it all planned out, and you're going to go here, you're going to go there, and you're going to go a lot of other places. And, sometimes you got to do things that maybe don't quite fall in line with a particular goal, but somehow just realize that you're in a position to be able to connect with people at all times. So it pays to just treat people well and be respectful, and just kind of recognize that your behavior on and off the court or the stage or whatever makes an impact on people. And then just don't be afraid to say no. That's one thing that, when I was in college and really getting my feet in the ground in Milwaukee, I moved to Milwaukee in 2010. I may have overextended myself at times, and it doesn't feel good for yourself, but also when you get too busy, you can't do everything well to the best of your ability, and sometimes you upset people that you really care about, and that doesn't feel good. So just kind of recognizing the need to push yourself, but also don't overcompensate in the matter just to try to do something that you want to do. And then I'd say just be yourself. There's many times where I've tried not to be myself and it didn't work. And so now as I've gotten older, and another thing kind of going back to what Quinn said is check in with your future self. So sometimes I'll sit down and write myself a letter, and I've been surprised at how many things actually are on point with what I wanted to get at. So just pen and paper is a good way to kind of just check in with yourself, but then also, talk to people about what you want to do. And if there's people that can connect you, there's always somebody that knows how to connect you to somebody who knows a little bit more. So just talk to people, and don't be afraid to like ask questions and bug people if you need to.
How many of y'all got TikTok? Show of hands. Okay, so if you're on TikTok, you may have seen that there's this trend that was going around in the last couple of weeks where you close your eyes and you listen to this music and you envision your younger self coming up to you asking for a hug. I hate that trend. I hate it so much because all people are doing is crying on camera, and I'm like, I don't want you to see me having an introspective moment like that. Okay, but it has caused me to think, I'm like, would my 10-year-old, 8-year-old self, Brittany, be satisfied with where we are now? Mostly no, because Brittany thought she was going to be Brandy by now, but my note to you is give yourself grace. Life is going to be full of nothing but pivots, okay? Every pivot that you are given is not meant to steer you off course, okay? Like, just because you thought you were going to be doing something by 18, by whatever, doesn't mean you can't still do it. I'm in my 30s, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no limit to how long you can pursue doing the things that make you happy. So that's my first piece of advice, is definitely give yourself grace and time and run your course, and don't let anything get you off of that. With you being young, if you're into something or have been doing something, take this time to actually start practicing setting some boundaries. Like try to set some professional establishments for yourself. You have no idea how many people I know want to hire teens to play at events or to do things, but they're like, oh, we don't have to pay them, they're kids. I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, are you not paying them to provide you a service? Are you not paying them to entertain you? So like take little moments that you can to try to see, like, what can my early precedents be? Like, maybe I can start doing things for $50, and see that can be like your standard and go from there. That's been my biggest thing the last couple of years, actually, is trying to get the younger generation of creatives to set stronger boundaries for themselves so they don't have to deal with all the same rigmarole and being taken advantage of from everybody, regardless of, gender, race, anything. Like, everybody just has to have the same high standard set for themselves. So that's 2. And 3, if you are interested in learning about the music industry and all the different facets, then please make sure you follow Grace Weber's Music Lab, which is the program that I run at Radio Milwaukee, because all throughout the school year, we bring in live professionals who work as audio engineers, as singers, as band members, rappers, all those sorts of things. And they give live demonstrations, interviews, and open mics to the students for free. Okay, as long as you are 13 through 18. So at GW Music Lab is what I'm talking about. And if you want to follow me, it's the letter B, the word free, the number 2, music.
Woo! All right. We can open it up if anyone out here has a question. Now is your time to speak. You can ask it, and then I'll just repeat it out loud. So the question is, if you're having a moment where you feel like someone is discriminating against you, how do you handle it in that moment? And you can all answer, if anyone wants to raise your hand and has a specific thing that they can think of, you can take the floor.
Well, I think the best piece of advice is to try your absolute damnedest to stay calm. It's easier said than done, especially when you're in the heat of the moment. As much as you can do to stand your ground is going to be the first step with any of that. It's hard to say whether or not you're not going to be in those experiences as you go along, because they come and go, as we know. But I think being able to have that opportunity to stand your ground and know that what you're stating is true and valid, and practicing that each time it comes up will just make it even more definitive for you and then by the time you have your 5th experience, if there is one, you're like, no, I already know what this is about to be. Let me cut this in the head before it even gets there. So hopefully that can help you even start to cut some of those experiences down for other people.
Great question, great answer. Does anyone else have something they want to add to that?
I'd like to add something to that. If you do experience situations like that, don't be afraid to talk to other people about it. I know sometimes it can be hard to know how to handle it when you feel like you're backed into a corner. But if you need to, get people involved who know those people and put them on blast, because we can't be having that kind of behavior at all in any space. And so if there's some people who are supporting said persons or persecutors, those people need to go down too. But just not being afraid to like speak out, because there's been times where I've definitely let things slide. I mean, I was playing in restaurants when I was like a little sixth grader, right? I had a little weekend job. I didn't know that they weren't paying me as much as I should have gotten paid. And so, I didn't really say anything at first. And then I like told a couple people, and then I told a couple other people, and then eventually things started to change. But sometimes you gotta like, put your foot down, and also take time and space to just kind of like analyze the situation, and don't respond in like rashly. So you have to kind of outsmart people who are discriminating you sometimes. So one of those ways is just remaining where you are within yourself, and not letting the anger that might come from being discriminated against fuel the conversation that might need to happen next. So I think just like taking time and perspective in the matter helps you to be able to navigate calmly and smoothly how you need to.
And to add to one point she brought, don't be afraid to, if you have the opportunity to. There's nothing wrong with taking a moment and coming back. Especially if you don't trust that you're able to respond rationally or don't know the proper response. That can be the time when you go assess what happened, reach out to people that you trust, reach out to folks with experience of dealing with that, and then try to gather a better game plan for the next time you approach that person or the situation, so that you can make sure that you can address it in a more matter to your liking.
Ariel has something to say.
I just want to say, like, sometimes you don't realize until after something has happened that someone has done you wrong. And that is really when you need to take that moment to like share your story, because you don't want other people to end up in that situation. But also now that that's someone you aren't going to work with again. And you should be really clear about that. And if you feel it's necessary, when you let them know, like, you can say, this is exactly why I'm not working with you anymore. And, like, I appreciate the opportunity, or, we did this, but this is the reason. And be really clear about that, because sometimes people want to act like they don't realize that they've done something wrong. And sometimes they might legitimately not know that they did something wrong, but usually they're acting like they don't know they did something wrong. And you can give them that space to be that and doing that without diminishing yourself and without taking a loss on your end. So just remember, just because they exist and they're there doesn't mean you have to work with that person again.
Another thing that I wanted to point out about situations like this is the importance of community, and how we really need to just be there for each other, especially when, we're the ones that are being discriminated against. So if you are a bystander to that, make sure that, you check in with people and that you express your willingness to back them up, because I think a lot of the time when these situations go down, people feel incredibly powerless and feel like, how could they stand up to another person? So if you can be that person behind them, or help them reach out and help them figure things out, that can make a world of difference for people. I mean, recently there was a situation where this guy, I don't really know. I kind of checked out of the situation, but there was a guy who was making claims and saying he had all of this sway at a local venue and he really didn't, and he was upsetting someone about it. And the community came through, and, we made sure that he wasn't going to be playing at these shows anymore. And, there is importance in creating that community with each other and, setting the example with each other, because, this is a really small community in Milwaukee in the music scene. So sometimes people think they can't be touched, or, what they're doing is never going to actually, come and bite them in the butt eventually. But if, we can all stand together against that kind of stuff, that's how we actually can stop things from happening in the first place.
I was just going to say the same thing about community. You stole it. But no, there's like a lot of Facebook groups too that are really good for that. And what else was I gonna say? Oh, so I'm not really good at like confrontation when it happens. But it's happened multiple times where I'm like, okay, I realize what happened later, and I'll talk to my community of people, and you know, the next time it happens, then I'm like, okay, I thought about it more, like how to react on it. So it's okay if it like you don't know how to react to it right away. So.
How can we find you, and what do you got going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place right now. I'm really into TikTok right now, so if you want to find me on TikTok, my handle is Clayish Moon. I'm playing music again, just kind of dipping my toes into it. Don't have anything on the books, but just kind of hanging out. So feel free to reach out. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about stuff.
Currently, I'm at Summerfest doing design and photo, so we're getting ready for Summerfest, which is exciting. Also, over COVID, I made a wedding brand called Alternative Bride Photography, so I'm doing weddings and elopements. But so you can find me at Brianna Griepentrag is my music. You can ask me later if you want to know how to spell my last name. Or Alternative Bride, so that will kind of direct you to both, so yeah.
So I am focusing on releasing some original music under the name June Gloom. So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter right now, June Gloom MKE, I think. And as time goes on and things start opening up, I'll be doing recording work again and hopefully some live sound stuff.
So my next date is going to be this Friday at Pap's Best Place. So one of the things that I knew was going to be different for me once I got around to playing music was putting time into my own musical endeavors and launching my project. So it doesn't have a name at this point, but you can find me on Facebook as Steph Lippert. And I've got a number of performances the end of the month, and I'm playing a bunch of other bands that have albums out, all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Well, I threw my plug in earlier. But if you want to find anything out about me musically, I live on the internet. Like literally, you cannot find any of my content or music or what have you on my social media pages, specifically Instagram and TikTok. So please follow me at the letter B, the word free, number 2 music, which is Be Free to Music. Or if you want to learn more about the other musical opportunities that we're curating for children or teens in the city, you can follow GW Music Lab on Instagram or just go to our website, gwmusiclab.com.
Woo! All right. Now the big round of applause. Thank you.